Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and this is Wilkie. I thought we needed Wilkie in here for at least a cameo, and I am tempting him into the frame with a toy I'm going to give him just a second. And it's time for Friday Reads. On Friday, the 17th, Wilkie is mesmerized by this treat I'm getting ready to give him. He's doing great. He went to the vet yesterday, got all his booster shots, and he was so brave, and he's a good boy. So I'm going to give him this treat and let him sit back here and work on it. There you go. So I'm sitting down here on the floor at dog level, but I want to talk to you about this week in reading, viewing, etc. And if you hear some weird licking in the background, it's not me. So first of all, TV, we are watching Slow Horses, The Great British Bake Off. We're also watching The Lowdown, which is a show that is made by Sterling Harjo, who did Reservation Dogs, which I love. If you still haven't watched Reservation Dogs, it's one of my favorite shows. And this one is also set in Oklahoma, but it has kind of more of a Fargo or a Twin Peaks vibe, only not with the supernatural, although there is one kind of a ghost. Anyway, it stars Ethan Hawke, and he plays a bookstore owner. He owns a used bookstore, and he writes kind of an expose sort of newspaper column about local corruption. And he runs afoul of a corrupt family that has someone running for mayor. And it was funny that we thought of Twin Peaks early on. There's a scene even in a coffee shop where somebody's extolling about the coffee. And then Kyle MacLachlan shows up as the guy who's running for governor. And it all has to do with his brother, who has died in what is apparently a suicide, but maybe it isn't, and a collection of used books that have clues inside of them. And there are a couple of people reappearing from Reservation Dogs, but it's not connected. So Ethan Hawke was in Reservation Dogs in the last couple of episodes in a small but important role. The woman who played Deer Lady in Reservation Dogs is his ex-wife. It's kind of violent and crazy and dark humor, and we're enjoying it. And I don't think there's any new book award news this week. There was a whole bunch last week. I think we're in between right now. So we're going to go on to the book report. I finished 3 things, and I finished them all on the same day. It was like this big ta-da! And then now I'm reading some new books. So I want to talk to you about all of those. First of all, I finished reading On the Calculation of Volume 2, which is by Solvej, Balle. I don't know if I like the lighting down here, but I guess we'll just live with it for now. And the translator is Barbara Haveland. This was a buddy read with my friend Louise. We read the first one together, except I think that one was a reread for her. And then we read the second one. And we're not 100% sure if we love this series or not. We're interested enough that we both want to read book 3. So I can't tell you a lot about... Do you hear that incredibly loud air conditioner? You would not believe how hot it is today, and I don't even think it's 10 o'clock in the morning yet. It is blazing hot. We've had a couple days that were kind of a little bit off hot, like low 80s, that you think, oh, it's getting better. In fact, I got all excited and I made pumpkin spice muffins, and then today it's really hot again, so check back with me when I'm super happy in December when it's in the 70s. Anyway, off the topic, back to this. So the premise of the first book is that there's a woman named Tara Salter. She is an antiquarian book dealer with her husband Thomas, and she's on this little book trip to pick up some books at an auction, and it's November 18th comes up, and then the next day she wakes up and it's November 18th again. Every single day it's November 18th again. She can't get out of it. She can't change it. She sees the same things. Everyone else goes through their same routines all around her, and no matter what she does, the next day, it's reset, and it's November 18th. So that's the setup of the first book, and all the different ways that she tries to figure out what's going on and get out of the loop. I can't tell you how it ends, it would be a spoiler. And this is book 2, her continuing story, and I can't tell you what it is about, because it would kind of mess it up. But at different points in the book, I think we agreed at different points it was provocative in different parts, or interesting, and then a couple of parts just kind of lost us and we weren't that into what she was thinking about and doing. This author's really good at throwing in a hook at the end that makes you want to go forward in the series, and that did happen again in this book. So I do want to see what book 3 is going to be about. Will I stick it out for 7 books? I am not sure. I am not sure. And I was thinking, and I mentioned to Louise that the strategy of releasing these as short novels is pretty brilliant, because if Solvej Balle had said, hey, you know what, I have this great idea and it's going to be a 700 or 800 page book, the publishers might have been not quite as thrilled as this marketing. I don't think it's a marketing scheme. I'm not that cynical, but releasing it as short novels with hook endings is definitely more appealing than one enormously long book that might kind of meander about. So that's just my opinion. So I know some people are really, really loving this series. I am liking it and finding aspects of it interesting, but I wouldn't say that I don't have that feeling like, oh my gosh, I just have to get back into it. Oh, I can't believe, how long do I have to wait for the next one? I don't really feel like that. I'm interested. I want to see what happens next, but I'm not just die-hard crazy in love with the book. What I am crazy about is these cover designs. I love how these look. It's sort of like a hazy geode, but it does also kind of remind me of a migraine aura. I don't know if any of you have ever had that kind of migraine aura where there's like the sparkly colors and then there's sort of a fuzzy part in the middle, which is not a fun thing, but that kind of looks like it. But that's kind of weird to say, I love this cover. It reminds me of migraines, but I don't know. All right, the next book that I finished was Animal Farm by George Orwell with this cool cover. And you can't see it, but the paper feels really good. It's a folio edition with illustrations by Quentin Blake. And this book was the selection for our banned book club at the public library. This was our October selection, and I had never read it. It was a book that was in my kind of literary subconscious, or the popular culture subconscious, of knowing what the book was about and the themes and even some of the character names. But then when I started to read it, I realized I had not actually ever read Animal Farm. And once I read it, I understood, well, I never really completely understand the banning aspects. I understood why it's used widely in schools, why people read it in high school. The themes and the allegory are not hard to figure out. It's not subtle whatsoever, but it is quite powerful. And when Orwell wrote it, he was thinking about Russia. He was thinking about Stalin and the failure of the gap between the concept of communism and what actually happened when human nature and an authoritarian figure get into the mix. And what makes this book very classic and timely is how relevant this was as a read today. I was just kind of, I felt like an increasing sinking feeling as I read this story. So in this story, there is a farm. The animals on the farm decide to revolt against their unkind owner, and they have a vision. One of the characters, the characters are all the animals, the pigs, the horses, the sheep, the birds, the chickens, and everything. And one of them has a vision about kind of a utopian society, a communist society, but that word never comes into the story, where everyone will share equally in the work and share equally in the benefits, and no animal will be above another. So that is their original plan, and they come up with a scheme to drive the owner out. And then not too long after that, things begin to go sideways. Two pigs who are kind of self-appointed leaders of the group are constantly butting heads. Even when they both really believe in the same idea, they can't just agree on it and work together. One of them always has to be jockeying for a position above the other one, especially this one particular pig. Things become unbalanced increasingly. And I don't want to give away the plot. It's a very slim book. But as things go downhill, it became more and more, sadly, relevant, and the patterns of human behavior that appear in the animal behavior in this book are just kind of disheartening. Just in this book, you will find greed, hypocrisy, dishonesty, fraud, the use of propaganda and false media, revisionist history, the gaslighting and persecuting of anyone who questions the status quo or questions that, didn't we just talk about this? Didn't we decide this other way that we were going to do things? What about that meeting where we said this? No, we never said that. That is not, no. It's just like, oh, or the uneven application of rules and guidelines. And then even the final, Orwell loves to come in with that final chilling little piece at the end. Because I don't like to spoil classic books that other people like me might have gotten to a ripe old age and still not have read. But I'm really glad I read it. Can I say I enjoyed it? I can't really say I enjoyed it because it was so depressing, but I'm really glad I read it, and the discussion was great with the group at the library. Now, the other book that I finished this week was Wilkie Collins, yes, you, with No Name. This is one of my Victober selections, and I put myself together a little, I did a little math because I had 2 long Victober novels that I had selected, and if I didn't manage to finish them both in October, it's fine, but I thought I would figure out how many pages do I need to read a day in order to get them both in, and which was 40 pages. So I was able to stick to that schedule and finish Wilkie Collins by the midpoint a couple days ago in the month. And I've been wanting to reread this book for years and years and years. This was such a fun book. So I talked about it some last week, but No Name is about a young woman named Magdalene and her sister Nora, who find out when their parents die unexpectedly that their parents were actually not married most of their lives. Definitely not when they were born. And there's particular reasons why this happened. And there are a bunch of legal complications. So her father's will, which he thought that he had fixed and taken care of some problems so that he could leave his considerable fortune to his daughters, it's void, and all of his property and money is going to an estranged brother who they haven't talked to in years, who's mean and greedy and stingy and nasty. So the 2 young women are out of luck. One young woman accepts the sad fate and begins to look for a job as a governess. But Magdalene is really pissed, and she wants to get the money back, and she wants revenge. That does not work for her that these mean, stingy, distant relatives are stealing what she believes belongs to her and her sister. And she doesn't want to go after them and destroy their fortunes. She just wants the exact amount stated in her father's will. And she will stop at nothing to get this. She has acting skills. She develops some disguising skills. She goes into cahoots with a distant cousin of hers named Captain Rag, who is a professional con artist, and he's actually been trying to bilk Magdalene's mother out of money. He's a distant relative, and he's been trying to shake her down for years. But they kind of form this uneasy alliance, and he starts teaching her more about the arts of deception. And it becomes this very rollicking tale. The best characters in this book are some of the side characters, like Dr. Rag, and also the evil Mrs. Lecomte, who is the housekeeper of Noel Vanstone, her cousin that she's trying to bilk out of the fortune that he is receiving that should be hers. Noel Vanstone himself, a vain, foolish, pompous man, another good character. I would say the weak point in this, there's 2 things. One is that Magdalene herself is a little hazy as far as a character in being the main character. I kept trying to get a kind of a good grasp on her character. And at first I thought, okay, this makes sense. She's supposed to be 18. She's kind of emotional. She's all over the place. She's composed and intent, and then she kind of falls apart. And then she's sad, and she's angry, and then she's really confident, and then she isn't. I thought, okay, I get that. But as it went on through the book, I just kind of ended up with this feeling like, oh, I can't quite get a full grasp on this character, but I was still rooting for her. And then the other thing, this happens a lot in a long, adventurous, twist and turn kind of Victorian story, is a reliance on a couple of really convenient coincidences. You got to suspend your disbelief a couple of times in this book, because some things happen or people line up at certain times and you're just thinking, for real? Are you kidding me? But it doesn't ruin the fun. So I enjoyed this very much. It also has a lot of societal commentary. When you think about it as being written in, wait a minute, what year? 1873. And the commentary on the ridiculousness of certain laws and issues of legitimacy, entailments, legacies, secret trust, some of the legal stuff. Also, the role of women, how they are, this comes up in many Victorian novels, the women not having adequate agency to be independent and be in control of their own lives, and having to depend on the kindness of others, of how basically there's a point in which the estranged part of the family could easily provide for Nora and Magdalene, but they just don't want to. And the fact that they have to rely on that, or else come up with very limited choices for how to support themselves. So there's that kind of commentary in the story as well. One day you're a lady living in a nice house, and the next day you're just illegitimate and you're nobody, and you have no name and you have no money. What happened with you? You didn't change. How come society can decide who you are and what your value is? So interesting things to think about, but a really fun tale. Now let's talk about what I'm currently reading. So I am reading We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This is a reread, and this is one of my books for my 60 before 60 rereads. I am reading this with my friend Michael. I think it's his first time reading it, but it's my second time. So the first time through, you're reading this book, it's just like, this is so weird. What is happening here? The second time through, I see more clues and breadcrumbs that lead me towards understanding what actually did happen. So in this story, we have a family. There's a young woman and her sister. Mary Catherine, or she goes by Mary Cat, is 18. Her sister Constance, a little bit older. They live with their uncle Julian, who is infirm. He is cognitively declining and in a wheelchair. And they live in a large family home. It sounds much larger than they would need on a big property. And we know at the very beginning that the townspeople do not like this family. They are shunned. We see Mary Catherine going to town to get groceries and library books, and the kids are yelling stuff at her. She goes in to have a cup of coffee, and a townsperson is trolling her and saying just kind of rude, provocative things to her. We don't really know why. We know that right from the start, she is an arresting character, because she is fantasizing about how she would love for all these people to drop dead and she could walk out of town across their dead bodies. And I'm thinking, this is an interesting girl. I want to hear more from her. And so we learn that Mary Cat, she really hates these forays into town. She really just wants to stay at home. She's very comfortable in her home and on her property. She has for herself lots of rules to live by, superstitions, magic words, kind of a whole imaginary safe sphere she's created around herself at home. And the way that her sister interacts and speaks with her sounds like the way you would talk to a much younger child. It's like a 12-year-old is telling a story. And in fact, we soon learned that something happened 6 years ago when she actually would have been 12, and we don't know exactly what it was yet. We know there used to be an entire extended family, and that everyone else is dead, and something strange happened 6 years ago. That's the setup. And now the story is opening up, and Mary Cat is feeling a change in the air. She's not sure what it is, but she doesn't like it. So that's where I'm at with We Have Always Lived in the Castle. And I just love Shirley Jackson. She just really appeals to the darker side of my reading interest, the psychological oddity and the creepiness that seems to be in everything she writes. I absolutely love it. I think it's a perfect selection for October. It's good for people that like to read something weird and creepy, but they don't want a big old blood fest. The other one that I started just last night is Dr. Thorne by Anthony Trollope. This is my second Victorian novel, and this is book 3 in the Chronicles of Barset. Every time. Barsetshire. Why is it such a tongue twister? Anyway, I love this edition, and I've talked before about how I am trying to get all 6 books in this particular edition that came out about 10 years ago. I got the first book by accident in a library sale, and I thought, oh, I really love this edition. Let me see if I can find book 2 in this edition. Well, then I found out how old they were, and that it was really hard to find these one by one. So I have found the first 3, and then I found number 5, which I ordered, but I haven't found number 4 yet. Or I did see it, but it was like $75, and like, really, give me a break. I'm not going to pay $75 for one volume. I am determined to get the whole set. So this is book 3. I've read the first 3 chapters, which were mainly setup chapters. Anthony Trollope likes to take his time when he starts a novel and lay out where we are and who are the main players and a little backstory. And he tells you this. He comes in as the author or the narrator. He even says, okay, I know it might be kind of boring to start a book off like this, but I feel like I have to tell you about these people and where they are coming into the story. And then he goes ahead and he does it. So he kind of throws his voice in there a little bit. And he tells us about 2 families, the Greshams and the Thornes, how they are connected, what their backstory is. So that as we're coming into the story, we have young Frank Gresham, doesn't have a lot of money, and the status is kind of decreasing because of decisions that his father made. His father blew a lot of money in failed political activity. His mother is from another lofty family, and she still has delusions of grandeur, and he is just now coming of age. And then we have Mary Thorne, who's about the same age as Frank, and she's been raised by her uncle, Dr. Thorne. We find out about Dr. Thorne and about how he developed his practice in town. Shockingly, he came in and had some new ideas and had a very upfront pricing policy. I really love these treatments of the medical establishment in the 19th century in novels. And there's always this controversy about a new doctor or why people like this old doctor and this newer upstart doctor. So he comes in and he just kind of unsettles everybody with saying, well, this is my price, instead of having it be this sort of understated, under the table kind of situation. He's just like, this is a business, this is a job, and this is my rate. And he also likes to compound his own medications instead of just send them to the apothecary. So, oh my goodness. So we have Dr. Thorne, and we find out why he came to be raising his niece, and how Mary and Frank kind of grew up knowing each other because the 2 families lived close together, and Mary did take some of her education and lessons alongside of Frank's sisters. So that's what I've gotten so far. The backstories of the families. Obviously, we've got Frank and Mary. They're about the same age, and they both just became adults. So, I wonder what might happen. So but apparently a lot's going to happen because the book is long. But I love Anthony Trollope, and I'm really excited to be starting this book. Got a couple of peripheral things going as well. As I mentioned, I'm still reading Terror Counter by Fargo, Nissim, Tbakhi. He's a queer Palestinian American performance artist and poet. His book was longlisted for the National Book Award this year. Deep Vellum Press sent this to me as the, I think it was the September selection. And I'm just now reading it. I find them very challenging. It's not the kind of poetry that I usually gravitate to, but I really like that it's stretching me to read some different kind of material. The poems are very, I would say they're both angry and anguished. They're personal and political. They're very, very urgent. They experiment with form. Some of them are more traditional in form, and some of them are play with visual shapes and things like that. Sizes, parts that are faded out. There's just different interesting things going on. It's not, even though it's thin, it's not a fast read because the poems are intense and I have to read them and sit with them and think about it and then try to read another one. When I get to the end, I want to go back and look at a couple of them again. I never really get to the end with poetry. I just get to a stopping place until I come back to read them more. I guess all books are kind of like that, but poetry especially. Because if I'm really into the poem, I have to read it, think about it, read it again, read it out loud, come back, comes back into my mind a month later, go find it, read it some more. So I really like the way that it is challenging me outside of my usual poetry zone and reading these uncomfortable and very timely pieces. And then last but definitely not least, I started reading the essays I Remember Nothing by Nora Ephron. This is my nonfiction selection for the month, keeping it on the light side with the nonfiction. I've already laughed out loud multiple times just reading the first two essays. Begin with all the things that she can't remember and how her middle-aged brain is just dropping stuff right and left. She wrote this in 2010. I always forget what year it was she passed away, but it was just so funny. There's this part in there, and this has happened to me. She's talking about how she and her friends can remember the name of the movie about Klaus von Bülow with Jeremy Irons, and how nobody could remember it, and then they all Googled it, and it's called Reversal of Fortune, and then they proceeded to immediately once again forget the name of the movie. I have done this exact same thing, well, with many movies, but I've done it with that movie. I randomly one day thought about, oh yeah, that movie about Sonny von Bülow and Klaus von Bülow. What was that movie? Jeremy Irons. He was Klaus. I did the exact same thing. So I really had to laugh when that came up in the story. And she just has a list of all the things she can't remember, famous people she met, but she couldn't tell you any of the details. She just knows it happened. It's so funny, and it's a great antidote for all the other things, all the other nonfiction, true life, factual crap that is bombarding me every day. I am defended by Nora Ephron. Okay, I think that is it. What is coming up next? So I'm busy with a lot of books, but when a couple of these shorter ones conclude, what I need to read next is the next two books in my projects. The play for the second half of the month in Endless Drama is Loot by Joe Orton. Never mind the man in the background. And also The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, which is the second book in science fiction double feature this month. Okay, I think he just sprung Wilkie. So those will be coming up next. One is short, one is long. We'll see how that pans out, but I should be talking about at least one of those by next week. So I hope you have a great weekend in store. Take care. I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.